be patient. Please be patient. All systems downloading. Welcome to Katie.Show.
I'm so nervous. I'm so seriously having to, because I have a history with you. And I'm afraid you're going to exact your revenge.
Really?
Go ahead. No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Speaking of revenge, welcome into Katie.Show. And Christmas come early here, because not only am I always joined by my partner in crime, Sam Roberts, Sirius XM, but right in the middle. It's like a rose between two thorns.
I'm not comfortable.
One of the most powerful men in media.
You know, on one of the most uncomfortable chairs in the business.
It is so funny to hear you say this.
Why?
Why are you uncomfortable?
I like to do the interviewing. I like to be the one asking the questions.
Oh my gosh, no.
And I don't trust you entirely either. I trust Sam completely because I don't know him.
Yeah.
But you, I'm nervous
about. That's like
about.
the worst thing to say to somebody like that.
No, trust me.
Horrible.
All right, go ahead.
And speaking of, nobody trusts you.
I know.
I feel like I was
With
going to
good
ask you
reason.
this later, but I mean, between Ellen, but now you've got your karma, because the really funny thing was last month, Neil Patrick Harris got you good.
Yeah, you got me good. You must have just taken delight in that.
Can we back up and talk about how funny that was?
Yeah.
You went into a dubinator.
Duplicator.
Duplicator.
You're supposed to be the tech person.
Dude, I've never even seen this thing before.
It's real, by the way.
It is real. It's in New York City.
Yeah.
It's this little machine that you go into.
It's a booth with lights and cameras. You stand in the middle of it. They start snapping photos of you from all angles, and they use that to create a 3D little statuette of you that looks exactly like you.
But why are you in a little drummer boy costume?
Well, because they told us we were doing a story and it was going to air during the holidays, and so it would be fun to have kind of these holiday editions of me and Savannah. So Savannah went in first, and there were no problems, clearly. And then she came out and was watching on a monitor when I went in, and I stood there, and all of a sudden the duplicator malfunctioned, and lights started going off, and sirens and explosions, and then this nasty green slime started shooting out of little holes I couldn't even see, covering me. And the most amazing thing to me was, you'd think you have a partner, Savannah, that she
you
would
were
make...
actually yelling for her help.
That was the sweetest part of the whole thing, that you were in there going, Savannah? Savannah, where are you?
Did you notice, Sam, she didn't make one move toward the
didn't.
door? Not when she stood in the monitor going, oh my, come to the freaking door and unlock it and let your partner out.
No, she's kind of just looking at it going,
Yeah.
what's going on?
What is that?
Yeah.
What is that yellow stuff?
Yeah.
It was
nasty.
amazing.
Neil Patrick Harris on my list, by the way.
Oh, is that next on
My
your
naughty
prank
and
list?
nice list, he's on the naughty
Now
list.
it's like a ping pong match. It's back and forth.
I got you pretty good, though, one
Yeah,
time.
let's close with that in this little segment here,
One of
because
my favorites ever.
I can't even tell you, Sam, you know the anxiety I have when you get like an exclusive first look.
Yeah.
And you like sign your firstborn away.
Well, I know the story you're about to tell because she called me afterwards.
Yeah?
Because she was so stressed out still.
Sam, she was shaking.
Yeah.
Physically shaking on the set. She was going to show us, what was the gadget?
It was the iPhone
6?
6.
The iPhone
Yeah.
6.
Or was it the Apple Watch?
Oh, I think it was the watch.
It was the Apple Watch.
It was
Yeah.
the watch. And she had a box on the set that she was going to come
Came
on.
in early, I wrapped it.
Yeah.
And with all the pomp and circumstance, she was going to put it on the set. The four of us were on the desk with her. And she was going to open the box and show us the first glimpse of the Apple Watch ever on American television. But I got the prop guy to let me have the box first, and I took the watch out of it and gave her the box. She puts it down, and she goes into her whole build-up. It's amazing. 40 years in the making. It's going to revolutionize your wrist, the whole thing. And she opens the box, and I look at her face, and she's like, she's looking under the tissue paper, and she starts to shake, panic that someone has stolen the prototype Apple Watch.
Well, it works on so many levels because it's the Today Show, it's Apple, it's Katie, who
It's live.
loves being prepared for her live TV segments. Like, more than life, she loves to prepare for things.
Well, I also just felt like I had nothing to offer, and that's where I got really embarrassed. I started getting like really hot because I'm just like, I don't have anything of value right now.
Without
Like,
the
I guess
gadget.
we'll just pretend it's here.
Take my word
talk
for
about
it. It's
it.
fabulous.
And then you actually
I didn't let you suffer too long. No.
It's amazing to me how many people, I think of all the places that I work and all the things we do, more people ask me about working with you
Really?
than anyone.
What do they want to know?
What's it like working with Matt Lauer?
Yeah.
All the time.
Do they have preconceived notions?
It's just,
I have preconceived notions because, like, I think, like, stories like that and, like, watching the prank show, like, I would think, and maybe it's just because of my mentality for as long as I've been where I've been, but I feel like when people stay in places for as long as they are, they're either going through their motions or they're miserable or they're like, whatever. I get in when the camera goes on, I read what the teleprompter says, and then I go home. But every time there's one of these real-life moments, you're actually having a good time.
No, I am the perpetual 6-year-old, and I've been 6 years old since I took this job in 1997. That's what gets me through the days.
What's your formula, though? Like, in terms of, I mean, we were talking about it. Every big interview you've had, from Rachel Dolezal to Tom Cruise to Charlie Sheen, how much preparation are you putting into each of those, and which one has thrown you the most over the years?
You know, and I don't mean to be a contrarian here. I don't have a formula. I really don't. I think if you do that, you get yourself in trouble. You start to kind of hem yourself in. So I try to look at each interview as a completely separate entity. The most important thing is to let the interview go where it wants to go, not go in with preconceived notions where I'm going to take this guest from A to B to C to D, because that never works. And what happens is you start concentrating so much on the questions you plan to ask that you don't take the time to listen. So, you know, for Charlie Sheen, there were 1,000 things I wanted to ask him, but most of them depend on how he answers.
His answer.
And so you got to be willing. One of my pet peeves when I watch interviewers is when they simply go through the list of questions they have on the page. And sometimes you'll hear the person they're interviewing say something, and I scream at the television set when I'm home going, he just said this, ask him about that. And they don't. Right, he handed it to you. But to go back to your question about which one threw me the most, I think everybody was thrown a little bit by the Tom Cruise interview years ago just because it took such a sharp turn so quickly. But again, in that moment, your job is to let it go and just go with it.
And how do you, in those moments like that, especially like something like that, when somebody's being combative, remember that you're in the moment, remember your audience, because nobody watching the Today Show wants to see you get into an argument with somebody.
You can have a healthy debate on live television. I think that's, people expect that. But there has to be treating it, in the simplest terms, they're guests on our show. Just like you would have a guest in your home, you would treat that guest with the respect that a guest deserves. And so I always feel that's the way. I think the best interviews are interviews where there is a healthy amount of back and forth, but at the end of it, both people walk away with their head held high. It should never be a one-sided affair. It should never be where, I never want to hear people, I think a lot of people think it's a compliment if they come up and go, wow, you really nailed that person. That's not what I want to. I want to hear, well, I learned something in that interview, and by the way, I thought he was good or she was good, and your questions were good. I want it to be good for both people.
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? Like, finding a way that it's good for the interviewee, it's good for you, and it's good for the audience.
And there's more of a kind of common sense, rational reason for that, Sam, is that if in fact you do beat up on someone, and we try never to do that, Rachel Dolezal was one, keep in mind there are future interviews watching. Right. And so there are people at home who may be the big get a month from now. And the last thing they want to do is then say, okay, I'm going to go let Matt interview me if they've just seen me brutalize somebody.
Right.
You want everybody to think they're going to get a fair shot, and not only think it, they will get a fair shot.
Is there anyone you haven't got yet that you'd love to do? It's probably
there's always
you get all the time.
Yeah, but it's always the person. If I go home today and my phone goes off or I see something breaking, it's the person at the center of that story.
I can't believe you met the Pope. Like that to me, when I saw that.
I met 2 popes.
You
I
met
got lucky.
2 popes?
I got lucky. Wait, there's a
Who is 2
picture here.
popes?
I think there's a picture in here somewhere of one of them.
Oh, by the way, speaking of pictures in here, so not like we totally went through your office before you got
You
here.
didn't go through the drawers or anything,
Not
did you?
at all. But we did see one amazing photo. Like, this is how you know you're with someone important. It's kind of a big deal. There's a photo, Sam.
Well, yeah, it's George W. Bush over there. It's the first thing I noticed because I'm like, popes, presidents, like you've met presidents, but the photo from George W. Bush is signed, but it says, hey, Matt, nice abs.
Yeah.
George W. Bush.
There was this kind of period where there was this picture making the rounds of me on the beach with my daughter.
I remember.
And so I went to go.
That's the first time I knew who Matt Lauer was.
Yeah, then I know what you pay attention to. And I went to the White House to interview President Bush, and he came out into the Oval Office holding the magazine.
Oh, it's fantastic.
So that was kind of an icebreaker.
Which is also a good strategy, talking about interviews, for President Bush to come in.
It was smart.
Like, with this friendly
yeah,
sort
there
of
was
like,
this kind of, lowering the tension, right?
Yeah.
And it was, I believe the interview was about the 5th anniversary of 9/11. So it was meant to be a very serious interview, which it was, but that's how he walked into the room.
Yeah.
So we have to talk about technology.
Oh,
and
God.
we'll talk technology.
You know me. Can you at least tell
Well,
people you know?
No, I think you're brilliant. And I think I'm fascinated by, in the past, you've done a lot of tech segments. And you've actually taken a liking to a lot of the gadgets that I brought on. Specifically, one that comes to mind is these video camcorder and ski goggles.
Yeah.
You ask questions and you're curious.
Well, because
maybe it's not your bag, but you're...
The good thing is I can ask the questions that the average person would ask because I know nothing. I love gadgets. So every time somebody comes out with something new, Al and I rush off to get it. And then Al takes it and really utilizes it. And I sit there and a month later I say, Al, how do you turn the buzzer off on this thing? So I'm bad at it. I forget things. My phone here, it's weird. I downloaded the upgrade system,
Sure.
where they tell you plug it in overnight and it's going to upgrade.
Yep.
Since that time, I have like 9 apps that don't work anymore. And this has been a month.
This is fundamental, Matt. We're going to work on this.
We have to do that. Well, I need
I'm going to
you.
teach you the new emojis
So now
and
that
a
I-
few more apps.
The emojis, I'm not sure you're going to get me on.
We're going to work
I
on
like
it.
words.
But
How
what
do
is
you emote? How do people know how you're feeling?
Yeah,
You just
Yeah,
use words.
lots of
Yeah, you can say,
exclamation points.
here's how I'm feeling.
I
Try
like
it sometime. You'll like it. It's very old school.
What does somebody even get you for Christmas that you would like?
I'm
What
hard.
does Matt Lauer need these days?
No, I'm hard to get things for Christmas. My wife and I have kind of abandoned that because, first of all, we don't need anything. We really don't. And so, we travel a lot. We like to, if we're on the road and we're in some place that we think is fabulous, we like to buy maybe a piece of art or something like that. But in terms of tchotchkes and ties and clothes, I just don't need it. And so, you're right, I'm very hard to buy for.
What do the kids want?
You know what the kids are into? The kids all dig these Segways without the handles.
Oh, the
hoverboard,
hoverboards with wheels.
Yeah, I was
though.
going to say,
They're
it's not a
hover.
hoverboard.
No.
We just went through the whole anniversary of Back to the Future.
Yes.
That was a hoverboard.
Right.
This thing is a Segway without the handle.
I was amazed that kids are asking for hoverboards this year. Like, I was happy with the 64 crayons with a built-in sharpener. Like, if you had silver and gold, you were rolling deep.
Right.
Like, I grew up in a different time.
Right.
And I was like doing stuff off of the tree, where you like take somebody's name. It was like hoverboard. I was like, dude,
Yeah.
must be nice.
But then the irony of it is that they must have sold 10,000 of them here in New York City, and then New York
Yes.
City turned around and made them
They're
illegal.
illegal.
Yeah, so great. Take them to the country and use them.
Speaking of the holidays, I thought it was really funny how this is just an example of how you live under a microscope. We have a lot of holiday segments on the Today Show, and you got busted for your turkey making skills.
Sometimes you do
It
something.
was so magnified.
Right, because of social media. And actually, this is one of those examples where social media does it right. So I was doing a cooking segment with Curtis Stone, I think it was, and unexpectedly he said, hey, we're going to brine this turkey. Why don't you? I said, I'll get it. So I picked up the whole bird, raw bird, and I put it in the brine. And then we had, as we always do in our cooking segments, our televised segments, you've immediately got the finished product.
Hooray!
So it's like it's like presto changeo. So 8 feet from where I put the turkey in the brine is this platter of steaming hot, perfect turkey. And of course, I just wipe my hands with a towel and reach
Fail.
and start to eat the
Fail.
cooked turkey. And I guess if I'd had my phone in my pocket, I would have known that it was on fire. But people at home were screaming, were saying, I was screaming at the television set, you just touched raw poultry.
People at home were also saying, enjoy salmonella for 24 hours, you idiot.
Lock yourself in the bathroom, you idiot. And it was crazy. So I had to go on the next day and say, don't do what I did.
As somebody who's been in news media, I guess, for over 30 years now, right?
Yeah.
Do you, now you're kind of, you do Today's Show and you report on things, but like the interviews are I feel like your specialty right
It's what I like the most.
Oh,
That's what I was going to ask you.
Which, by the way, we should tell him, Sam, that on one of your top 10 in the world podcasts that we co-host, you call him, we have a segment, a Matt Lauer segment, which I've told you about briefly in passing, where Sam calls you the liar whisperer.
Yeah,
What does
because
that mean even?
Well, it means that like every time
We're kind of obsessed with you.
it means people have faith in you, I guess, because every time there's somebody who's lying consistently and they're doing their first interview.
Nail them.
You're the one who always gets them, and it always ends up being, oh, Matt, whether it's Rachel Dolezal or whether it's whoever.
Right.
Like, you're the one who's going to sit down with them, and like you said when we were talking
We can
before,
make T-shirts for you off this.
The Liar
well,
Whisperer.
Liar Whisperer, because you do it
It's
in
the
such
new
a way
Make America Great.
where you're asking hard questions and real questions, but it's not sort of an attack. It's like, here's what people want to know. Let's answer it honestly.
We talk a lot when we're dealing with those people before they agree to do the interview. One of the things we talk about a lot, Sam, is tone.
Mm-hmm.
There's more than one way to ask the same question.
Right.
And some people like to take a hammer and go bang right in between someone's eyes. I've never been that way. I've always felt you get the old expression, a little more with honey than vinegar. And so I try to have a tone that makes them feel as if they're not being prosecuted, and opens them up a little bit. One of the things that's changed a lot is we used to do interviews that would last 40 minutes, 30 minutes, and you had a little bit of time to kind of, even on live television, go through a bit of a warm-up process and then get to the meat of the subject and then maybe a little cool-down process. You know, the interviews are shorter, which makes them more intense now, and so you don't have that same time to kind of set the table, so to speak. And generally, I like to now do the introduction and get right into the heart of it. You know, Charlie Sheen the other day, it was interesting. We had been talking on the phone before he came on, and he said to me, you know, Matt, I'm going to be really nervous, and so you might have to be the one to make the announcement. I said, Charlie, you have to understand that this announcement is going to go everywhere. This is going to be big news. The last thing all these media outlets want and all the online sites want is me saying this. They need you to say it.
Well, also, that would be bad for you.
Well, it's just not the right, it's his announcement. And so, but again, we start the interview, Charlie, how are you? Great. You have something to say.
Right.
Because then everything flows from that announcement.
But that's such a great story on like another level, because you watch some of these shows and you know that it's a guy getting index cards and asking questions, and the fact that you're still like calling the subject, you're on the phone with the person that you're going to interview the next day, because you know it's a serious interview. It's a huge announcement that's going to go everywhere, and yet let's talk about what we're going to do.
And yet you never say, okay, let's plot it out.
Right.
And you never tell them the questions, and they ask all the time. All guests, every guest says, so what are you going to ask me? And we always say, well, that's just against what we do as journalists to do that. You know the topics.
Right.
I mean, they all know that, so I'll say that to them all the time. Believe me, you know the answers to the questions, and you know the topics we're going to cover, but am I going to tell you what question I'm going to ask you? Absolutely not. And first of all, you don't want it to sound rehearsed on the air.
Of course.
That's the worst thing. I mean, that makes it sound like it's a staged event. And we want these things to be what they truly are, which is organic. You want this interview, even if you think it's going to go in this direction, but if it makes that left turn, you drop what you were going to talk about and you go there. I mean, it'd be like somebody saying, if I said to you, so when did you start on the radio? And you said, well, it was the week after I killed somebody, and I said, and why do you like radio? And it's crazy. You killed somebody? So you have to just sit there, and there's no better quality for any interviewer than to be a good listener.
When you started and you were reporting news and hosting shows and stuff like that, did you know what you eventually want to do is get more into this lane, or was it sort of something that you realized, I like this part of it?
Well, I started out, and I was doing for a long time, I was doing talk shows, and I got tired of being canceled. And so I said, I should probably get in the news because they don't cancel the news.
Right.
And I had a lot of well-publicized, I think I was either fired or canceled from 4 or 5 shows in a row. And that gets old in a big hurry. So this had always been my dream. I'll be very honest. I know it sounds so goofy and so cliche, but as a young guy in college and after college, just even starting to think about a career in broadcasting, if you had come up to me and said, what would you like to do? I would have said, any part of the Today Show would be great. I grew up watching this show. And so all of a sudden when I came to work at WNBC and started actually filling in for Bryant Gumbel, it was mind-boggling. And then all of a sudden I realized when people would come up to me and go, you're the only guy who fills in for Bryant Gumbel. And I started thinking, oh God, what does that mean? And then when they called me one day and said, and Bryant was my best friend, he told me he was going to leave, and they called me and said, would you like to do this job? it was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It was
Speaking
really
of
cool.
best friends too, funny that you're such good friends with Howard Stern.
Yeah.
That's
Why
awesome.
is it, everybody says that's so
I
funny.
was actually thinking about that when you were talking about your interview style. Because like he's another one of these guys that does these incredible interviews.
Well, and Howard and I talk all the time when we have dinner is that he's got this incredible luxury of time.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous of the fact
That's the best part of radio.
he can do an hour or two
Yeah.
with someone, and sooner or later, but he could get magic out of 5 minutes because that's just who he is. But when he sits down with someone like a Billy Joel or God, who else have I listened to a lot of these? Neil Young, and he goes for an hour and something. You just sit there and you put the seatbelt on because you know you're going to learn something you never ever heard before.
Yeah.
Well, we can't leave you empty-handed. And since
I
this
get
is our
I
Tech
get
the
parting
Halls
gifts.
segment, let's start with the small one first. Parting gift.
Should I open them?
Yeah,
live?
open it up.
Okay, great.
I know
Thank
for
you.
anyone listening, just know that it was wrapped in Snoopy wrapping paper appropriately.
Star
Dude,
Wars.
Matt Lauer has never seen Star Wars.
Well, I've seen pieces of Star Wars.
What?
The people are very
What
angry
is
about
this?
that.
A Chewbacca
It's a
speaker.
Chewbacca. You wouldn't know. It's Chewbacca. It's a character in Star Wars.
No, I've heard of Chewbacca. So I've got 3 kids, so I've watched pieces of all of them. Truth be told, I've never watched one start to finish.
It's a disappointment.
I am vowing before the new one comes out to watch.
You're gonna
all
binge
the.
watch
I'm
it.
going to do I think Al and I were going to go to a theater and do a Star Wars film festival. Thank you for that.
All right, this is your intense Christmas gift of the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So every year I put a compilation, which I will be showcasing on today's show next week.
I'm actually just kind of surprised that you haven't given me an empty box yet, just to turn the tables.
Or like Homeland Security cologne, like a fake one.
What
This is
this?
good. This is good.
What
So
is
he
this?
may not have seen this either because he hasn't seen Star Wars. But it is a real replica
Premium motion.
dancing Groot. People will love this. You have to put this in your office.
What does it do?
Okay, so Guardians of the Galaxy,
That's what
dude.
Groot does.
Yeah, it just dances?
Have you seen the movie?
Yes. I love the
In
movie.
the end, where the little guy's like the little baby Groot, he's like doing his thing.
He does that?
It's a
Is it
exact-
battery operated?
Yes, you are in good shape, and
Oh,
it's
that
to
is
scale.
fantastic.
So
Does it
this-
play the same music? I
I
love
don't
that
know.
soundtrack.
That's a great question.
That's the best soundtrack ever.
Yeah.
It's great. Well, thank you guys.
Thank
You can play the
you.
soundtrack out of your Chewbacca speaker.
Done.
Perfect. I'll hook
Yeah.
it up. That's great.
Sam
guys,
Roberts,
thank you.
Matt Lauer, thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Sam. What a pleasure.
Yay! Thank you so much. Appreciate
Happy
it.
holidays.
You're awesome.
You are. Thank you.
Thank you for your participation in Katie Linendoll.Show. Follow our host at Katie Linendoll on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you haven't subscribed to the show, please do.